Tom and JJ back in the house. Not the hood, just
Whoop.
back in the house.
Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police. So, we are talking bizarre, obscure, and less discussed 90s cartoons. They can be Saturday morning. They can be something that changes rating based on the channel, like Ren and Stimpy, or they can just be just something where you're just like, they made that. They went for it. SWAT cats. It was a thing.
I know, right?
So, I mean, it's pretty much the 80s 2.0, like you guys are saying, seeing what they can get away with for adults, seeing what they can sneak by on Sundays, seeing what new versions of RoboCop and Ghostbusters they can do that for dying franchises, since they're not going to make a third or fourth or fifth outing anytime soon.
Yeah, it's kind of sad because Ghostbusters go from that original lineup, and then they do Ghostbusters Extreme. I think probably in 90. I think Ghostbusters 2 came out in 89, so it's got to be 90, 91.
At least, and I think they showed reruns in 97 with some like live action inserts or some shit like that.
Yeah.
I definitely saw Fox Kids replay that a bunch in the early 2000s.
And that kind of killed off that franchise. The Smurfs died off.
Yeah, Smurfs.
Quiet Death.
G.I. Joe died off.
Yep.
G.I. Joe died off.
Does more syndication, like, and especially when they got to the 2000s, they would take stock footage of the various cartoons and make it look like they were doing a cartoon, like football style face off or something like that.
Yeah.
But you mix it in with all their other cartoons, and you're like, this is weird, seeing all these classic Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera mixed in with the likes of Johnny Bravo and Powerpuff Girls. Yeah. This is weird.
Well, to me, it was like all those franchises died off. You know, like Tom said, G.I. Joe, Transformers.
They didn't know how to market it. Like that, they had gone past the breaking point.
Yeah, the lines were now everything was starting to, die out. I mean, our generation was growing up, and these kids wanted, something else totally different. So they pulled all those cartoons off quietly, and the after-school shows were, I don't know what was going on after school back then, but then all of a sudden these shows were popping up like Tasmania,
Animaniacs.
Timon and Pumbaa was definitely a big one. It was like that was the gist. Whatever's the current hit Disney film, animated film, you gotta have their direct-to-video department do some animated cartoons. But ironically, definitely the Saturday morning cartoons were way better, way more leagues ahead of the direct-to-video.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you had Aladdin came out on DVD, and then they did the TV series, but they couldn't get Robin Williams, so they got Dan Castellaneta playing the genie. Great job.
I would have been so pissed had I been him, and you redo Robin Williams' voice in like part 3, and then they delete your lines. You're like, yeah, no, part of the marketing gimmick. We got to bring Robin back, even though he doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, and the great thing was that. And Tom and me talked about this, was that shows were coming on. You got to realize the big three, their Saturday mornings were starting to get phased out. NBC was the most prevalent one.
Oh, yeah. And they still wanted that. And I got, in the 2000s and 2010s, I got even more distracted because it's like they had that PAX channel, which later became freaking Ion TV. And then there was like another bunch of ones, which were... It was just so confusing. They just have all these cartoons for like 7 and up that were just like bizarre CGI. It's like they're trying to steal that Thomas the Tank Engine, JJ the Jet Plane money.
Well, what happened was that ABC was bought out by Disney.
Mm-hmm. ESPN and Disney, yep.
ESPN and Disney, and they had their Saturday morning, which was Recess, Pepper Ann, Detention.
Oh man, that takes me back.
I'm trying to think what else was on there. They phased out. Warner. Warner phased. They got rid of the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner show.
Yep.
Which for like, I don't know, Tom, maybe about 30 years almost.
killed so many deals to where basically many people would get cable just to have Cartoon Network in the morning. But Pepper and Teacher's Pet, just about every Disney Saturday morning cartoon on ABC got a movie.
And then CBS kind of like, had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was carried over from the 80s. So that was still big, but they were phasing out that process. And then NBC decided, hey, let's make the teenagers are growing up. And you got to hand this to Brandon Tartikoff when he was alive.
Yes.
California Dreaming, Hang Time, Guys Next Door, and the crown jewel was Saved by the Bell.
Everything had to be live action now since they couldn't get them to animated in time, and at the same time it was like, what are you gonna do?
Plus a little live action thing called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Mm-hmm. And, on occasion though, I would see them try to do more newer Schoolhouse Rock.
Yes, I remember that. They
they did one segment during the Drew Carey show that I didn't expect. I'm like, oh my god, whoa, hey, this is new. This is not old.
Do you ever get the feels like you would watch something like they bring something out and you'd be like, oh man, I miss that. Like, you're like, oh man, I miss Schoolhouse Rock. Darn, that's the end.
It's not coming back, but it better.
But then you got to realize that the big three were starting to feel the pinch, and then also the Fox and the WB were now.
WB would concern me. I'm like, hey, this is for a more adult audience, and yet he's faded a commercial. I'm seeing bugs on the logo. What's going on here?
Well, Fox breaks the ground with the Tracy Ullman Show and The Simpsons.
Man.
Yep.
So The Simpsons comes on. It's a big hit. Okay. And WB and Sam Simon and I think Matt Groening said, okay, we've got and what's his face? Brooks. Not
James Brooks.
James Brooks. They create another show that's not really as popular, but it's gotten a cult status called The Critic.
Yes.
It stinks.
It stinks. One of my favorite shows when they used to replay it on Comedy Central, like at 1:00 in the morning. I would watch this. I'd watch The Critic, or it was the other way around. So I'd watch that. Then
they all go together. This is the heckler hour.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then whatchamacallit? Fox begins to put on after school shows like Bobby's World, Life with Louie, Tasmania, Maniacs.
Bobby's World could get really violent at times. You're like, whoa.
Well, I don't remember Bobby's World being violent. I remember Tasmania. There was a lot of jokes in there that were like, if you got it, didn't get it, don't worry about it. But Tom brought
it when you're
I just recall Matt Mandel getting in a few fights in animated form.
Yeah.
It was minor compared to the other ones.
But Tom brought up a great one called Eek the Cat.
Eek the Cat, yes.
Savage Steve Holland.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most underrated filmmakers. And, he should have done more films, so he did Eek the Cat. I thought that was great work that he did. And I think Dino Riders came in that, right?
Dino Riders. Everyone's soaking up the Nickelodeon with Wild Thornberries, Angry Beavers, and Hey Arnold.
Yeah. Cadillac and Dinosaurs.
Yeah, that was it.
Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. There you go. Yeah. Now there's one that everyone needs to refresh their mind on.
It's like Pooch. That was like Poochie on The Simpsons. It just didn't work the way it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I have to go now. My home planet needs me.
Yeah, there you go.
On the way home.
Captain Planet, that's one. Sailor Moon comes over and gets
Sailor Moon.
Sailor Moon. Yeah, make it sexless.
Yeah, have these Japanese girls in really skimpy outfits, and you got a bunch of hormonal teenage boys going.
My sister had the bootleg DVDs she had bought over Amazon in the early 2000s, and it took her a while to realize I don't even have an official copy. It's just they still don't have an official copy over here.
Well, the thing was that a lot of those. Then what was going on was that, you know, Fox was doing their thing, and then WB comes along, and they put out some of the WB comes out. They put out Freakazoid.
Oh yes,
the greatest
that
shows
was
of all time.
so much fun. I would, and when Static Shock came out, I'm like, yeah, but you know what really got you on there? It was definitely Freakazoid.
It was Freakazoid, Static Shock.
PBS had a bunch of cartoons, but it took me a while to realize, oh my god, you know, like Warner Bros. Is still doing new cartoons. You know, it's not just the Animaniacs and, you know, Pinky and the Brain. They're doing, you know, Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries, and at that time you couldn't find any information about it. It wasn't in any of the cartoon booklets. Every cartoon booklet up to that point was only talking about other stuff by Amblin and Warner Brothers TV, like the Batman cartoon show, but that was it.
Well, you got to think too, Batman premieres in 91.
91, 92, yeah, others.
And Tom, I forgot to tell you this, but Super Friends laid the groundwork for Batman, the Adventures of Batman and Robin, and the Adventures, and then that groundwork for Justice League, which laid the groundwork for Batman Beyond and Static Shock.
Oh yeah. And at that point, basically, Cartoon Network, I don't think could really do any wrong. I think everyone really does dig.
Cartoon Network broke a lot of people in.
A lot of people, when they weren't showing reruns of Tiny Toons or whatever, they, you know, Courage the Cowardly Dog, I Swore By, Kablam, I always got mixed up with Home Movies, which was two totally different shows, totally different hours. But I Am Weasel, I think if anyone who wasn't into Star Trek, they knew Michael Dorn from I Am Weasel.
I Am Weasel, I love that show.
And I would get so mixed up because, you know, he'd keep crossing over with Cow and Chicken. I'm like, oh, it's the same universe.
I are baboon. I am Weasel.
I am Weasel. And it just reminds me of just all the stupid arguments you would have with friends of LA. It's like, I'm fur, but I'm going to say it 5 more times until you acknowledge it. I am baboon.
I are baboon.
Baboon. The X-Men cartoon was great.
Which one? The Fox one?
92 one, I think, is when it began.
Yeah, that's the one with Fox.
And
the Fox one was perfect.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it got all the right notes. The voice talent was there. Animation style was there.
Oh yeah, I have lost faith in the world because now a lot of people are going on and basically bashing the cartoon style of that. I'm like, don't you dare! No. That
had Jim Lee written all over it. The way the characters were drawn.
Yeah,
Jim Lee.
Yeah.
This was before we were keeping track of who was doing the movie poster artworks and
and then you had Spider-Man on Fox.
Oh yes,
Spider-Man, yes. I think they re-aired that one definitely the most. Because it was just so much easier to get into. You look at the other versions of Spider-Man, you're like, yeah, they do a good, reasonable job, but that's the only one that I really definitely remember. It's definitely the early 90s.
And then they did the sequel Spider-Man 2099, which was like, okay.
Didn't they also have like Spider-Man Unlimited too in that?
I do recall seeing parts of Unlimited. It had a similar drawing style, but I could tell it was different, not just because of the extra subtitle, but just it was a little more complex.
What was the one where he went to the animal planet? Like the planet was run by animals, but they were humans.
I think it was shortly after Unlimited. There was like some other 01, 02 cartoon. They wanted to have. That was the other thing. Is like Marvel had to. That was where there's like, okay, we got to have an X-Men and a Spider-Man cartoon at the same time. We're coming out with the blockbusters. Soak up that whole giant market.
Well, here's one that after X-Men left and Spider-Man left, they brought in the Avengers United, but they couldn't use the big three. So what they used was the West Coast Avengers.
Yeah, which was still owned by Universal, and Iron Man, I think, was in development. You couldn't use him.
Well, you couldn't use the big three because of Marvel having the budget crunch they had back in the 90s. Even though and remember, they sold off a lot of their stuff, so you could use a lot of characters, but Marvel developed.
You could hint at them.
Yeah, you could hint at them, but you couldn't use them, And then they did X-Men Evolution in the early 2000s.
That was another one. People shat on it at the time. I recalled it being very watchable, and then they started re-airing it on places like ABC Family, after Fox had given it up and before it became Freeform, and I was like, it's not bad. It's an easy way to kill a Sunday. It's pretty
well. The thing with X-Men Evolution was that they followed some storylines, but not all the storylines. But they brought in a lot of characters that we didn't see in the X-Men show that was on Fox.
It had cool voice acting. Christopher Judge from Stargate was doing that in between shooting. It's just fun.
I'm gonna go on a limit. I'm weird because I actually like that Avengers United cartoon with Ant-Man as the leader. I actually liked it. The animation style was good. I was kind of freaked out by all the armor that everybody had to have.
Yeah.
But I think I kind of lump it in the entire 90s became the extremization of everything. Everything had to be extreme. Everything had to have neon colors and armor and for everybody, including people who don't need armor, and now armor on top of armor, and then pockets.
Well, the thing was that that was the first time we saw Falcon on TV.
Nice.
But
I take it you also saw the animated Fantastic Four and Incredible Hulk.
Yeah. Well, what was it? The Marvel Super Hour. It was.
That's what it was.
Iron Man.
It was Iron Man and Fantastic Four.
Yeah. And they would have Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange would appear, and the guy who voiced Doctor Strange was Dean Wormer himself, John Vernon.
Oh yes.
Nice.
And here's a little thing. When they had the Mighty Marvel Heroes back in the 60s, and it was, stronger than a whale, he can breathe underwater and go flying through the air. Oh, no, submariner, prince of the deep, for he will save us. Oh, Namor of Atlantis is the prince of the deep. I have that committed to memory.
That's great.
John Vernon was the voice of Namor.
Oh, man. Wow. Going that far back.
Yeah. I can remember that very, very clearly, but it got to me when they had Robert Hayes doing the voice of Iron Man. I don't know who's doing the Hulk as Bruce Banner, but Lou Ferrigno was doing the Hulk in the cartoon.
Yeah.
I think that's how he got some people into it. Is like, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want your kids to watch the classic show. You can just watch the cartoon form and you'll still be entertained because, hey, he's still got the same vocals.
But the thing is that, when you think about it, all these shows were on, and you could pick and choose. You had Earthworm Jim, which, unfortunately now has been relegated to the back row because the guy who created it is a whack job now, from what I understand.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, was that the same one? No, it's probably a different one. But there was another dude who is like everyone kind of knew behind the scenes, kind of was pedophilic, and there's like, okay, we'll use your ideas, but you're not allowed on the Paramount, Nickelodeon.
No, it was the guy who created Earthworm Jim. Had a podcast, and the funny thing was Mike Nelson was on it from Mystery Science Theater.
Oh, that's right. That was very recent, and he had to give a disclaimer. Hey, I do not endorse this viewpoints. I didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't know this guy was that nuts. And like, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, this is the guy who created Earthworm Jim, with Peter the puppy who turns into like a werewolf when he gets like nuts and stuff. I'm like,
he's been in it long enough. He's lost any sense of reality.
Yeah, so it's like, but the one that always sticks with me is Freakazoid, because I love that show, and they brought a lot of people back from, like, I'm not saying obscurity, but it was fun to hear some voices on there.
It was
like
very catchy.
It was very catchy. It was something to do with the internet, which was still being created, which has just been born.
Mm-hmm.
And the premise was that it was supposed to be the Creeper, the cartoon hero, the Creeper. They couldn't get the rights to it, so Paul Dini and I think the guy who created were like saying, "All right, we got to make him like this, like really wacky superhero who's like nuts, who's like more than nuts." And Paul Rugg, who came in to do the voice, basically improvised like almost all the parts. Like the first one they did with Dance of Doom, where he's like saving the thing from Cave Guy. He did that whole Jerry Lewis bit off the cuff.
Oh yes, it was wild.
And you have Ed Asner coming in as Cosgrove. God bless him.
Yes.
Jonathan Harris comes in as Professor Jones.
Jonathan Harris.
It was Jonathan Harris. My mother and I'm watching this one morning, and my mother says to me, she says, "Wait, that voice sounds really familiar." I'm like, yeah. No, I'm thinking it's Billy West.
Right.
Because
Billy West, but it's not
Billy West would imitate Dr. Smith on the Howard Stern show.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hearing it, I'm like, no, that can't be. That can't be.
That cannot be.
So then when he said in one episode, "Oh, we're lost in space," and he stopped and he just like looks around like real fast. He's like, "Oh, sorry," and I went, "Oh my God, that's Jonathan Harris."
That's fucking awesome.
And he says in an interview he loved doing that show because it was so absurdist, and he loves absurdity.
He's based his whole career on absurdity. He loves
it. Yeah. But it was just so fun to watch. You had Stephen Furst come in as Fanboy. They did Toby Danger, which was a takeoff on
Johnny Quest?
Quest. It was like a Johnny Quest Inspector Gadget kind of show. Just something for easygoing adventure.
And they had Bill Ratner, who played not Flint, as the Race Bannon character Dasho Pepper. And they got Don Messick. I think it was right before he passed away. Don Messick doing the voice of Dr. Danger, Professor Danger, and he was the voice of Benton Quest on the original Johnny Quest. So it was kind of like he's kind of like, okay, you're going to do a show, you're going to do a cartoon that's kind of spoofing you. He must have been like, yeah, okay, that's no problem, I'll do it, But I have both Freakazoid volumes at my house, and that should have gone for a third or fourth season, and they never. WB looked at it and went, "We're not getting the ratings we need on it. Pull the plug."
Bastards.
Yeah.
And the same way when Fox did that to the Tick.
Oh yeah.
The Tick was
that was fun.
It was an event.
I saw reruns of it around the same time that they did the live action Patrick Warburton show.
That show, the Tick. Oh,
so much fun.
It was subversive too, but it was still so much fun.
What's your favorite episode?
There's lots to choose from because it does, just like Animaniacs. It has a universal rare appeal to it, kind of.
Because
the one with Krakazog is pretty fun.
Krakazog, man. Yeah, everybody thought that was Tim Curry doing the voice. That was somebody else doing that voice, but they did it perfectly. Yes. My favorite was Omnipotus.
There you go.
And he's like, he's going to take the tickets blown out into space because he mixes up the jetpack with the explosive, and he's like, well, that's weird. This rocket pack is counting down. No, Tick, that's the explosive. It's going out into space. Everybody thinks he's dead, and then he's like, he's like, I am omnipotent. I am hungry, and it's like this, this really fat version of like
Transformers type voice.
Yes.
And he's driving around. I feel discomfort. Oh yeah, you got an asteroid here in your shoulder blade. It was just funny to watch. And then he eats half the moon away.
Oh yes,
yeah,
yes, he did.
Yep. And that's one of the things. And that's one of the things I really loved about the Tick, going to that, the continuity. Because
that's true. It did
the little things, like when Chairface Chippendale tried to carve.
It never did the one and done.
Yeah,
like everything's all good, just put it back together. It would actually follow it, which was wild because everyone's expecting camp, but it is actually kind of trying to make the comic book creators happy and fans happy. And,
Ben Englund was it Ben Englund who created that? I keep forgetting who created
it.
Yes.
It was someone Englund.
Ben Englund was a genius.
Ben Englund, yep.
And he stuck with it, but the thing I loved was the voice. They had Townsend Coleman as Tick, and they had Mickey Dolenz as Arthur. The first couple of episodes, and then he left the first season. Excuse me. Rob Paulson took over.
Yes, yeah. Him and Maurice were pretty much on all these other giant shows, even though they're going to be known for Pinky of the Brain. It's like they're on all the other Disney shows.
The funny thing is when you look at the Tick, they had people in there we never heard of, but we knew who they were if we saw them on TV, like Tony J.
Yes, Tony J, Jess Harnell, all these guys.
All these people we knew. And the great thing was that we were learning. The thing was, we were learning about who was doing those voices.
Lauren Tom, I am obsessed with. Tom, just so gorgeous, and you see her on all these serious shows like Homicide in the Newsroom. Yeah. You're like, but that's Lauren Tom, the voice actress.
Tress MacNeille.
We mentioned Chuck McCann last episode in
Chuck
a bit here.
Yeah. Oh, God bless Chuck. He was such a great guy. Funny guy too. Yeah.
You mentioned Stephen Furst. Rest in peace to him as well. That dude is just dynamite funny.
Well, we got to look at the guy who basically, was the Mel Blanc of that era, and that's
Billy West. Man, he accepted the torch patching, the passing of the torch, because he can say at the end of the day, "Hey, I'm the lead on Futurama." But it's like, no, growing up, I'm like, dude, you're voicing all these beloved characters from my childhood and the new characters. And I was already huge into Tom Kenny and everything from, Thundercats, Rocco, and SpongeBob. I'm like, yeah, but Billy, you're just cool. And I just remember reading an interview with him in like a Nickelodeon magazine, and he wasn't even freaking talking about anything else except how he actually, mastered his voices and made it his own. I'm like, that's awesome. This is as deep as any interview in this damn magazine's going to get.
We talk about the two big, the two upstarts in that era, Fox and WB channel, where I was Channel 9, that UPN thing, that wasn't really, they really didn't have that much. But then you look at what Nickelodeon was doing too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, UPN was pretty much doing what it was later on, which was just local reality shows and
Rocco's Modern Life, Doug, Hey Arnold.
It was touching, and that was years before I even found out about the LGBT connection to it. But I mean,
what show?
Oh, with Rocco's World, yeah.
Wait, I didn't know that.
Yeah, gay couple living together.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, all right, I didn't know.
There were so many parents who wanted to ban it. I'm like, come on, you want to ban this out of all shows? This is your kids might as well learn about it through this anyway. It's part of life.
Well, you had those shows. You had Rocco. You had Doug, Hey Arnold.
I watched a lot of Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, but what's so funny is It and Tailspin would be back to back. And if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me here. Didn't they cross over a few times?
They did, I think, once or twice.
And so that's just it, because I would see, the Blue Bear, who's not, freaking Babu from the Jungle Book, but it's like they'd be riding each other's helicopters with Chip and Dale, and it's just so wild how now everyone's gonna know about Chip and Dale from the new live action Sonic the Hedgehog influenced movie. I'm like, yeah, but people know from the 80s and 90s cartoons. And Chip and Dale to me were kind of like the Chipmunks. They would come in and just pop up now and again, and you forget. Yeah, that's right. How long have they been on? Oh, they've been off the air for a while, but they've constantly reshown. It's just an easy to get into cartoon. And the Rescuers Down Under were pretty much the unofficial kind of starter of that, but those were movies.
Yeah, but like you look at Nickelodeon, their cash cow for those like 2 or 3 years it was on was Ren and Stimpy.
Ren and Stimpy.
Oh, yes.
And years before Spike TV relaunched it and made it R-rated.
John Kirashofsky, I mean, granted, you know, what you read, he was kind of like, okay, fine, no problem, and then they kind of, I think they took it away from him and they gave the voices to Billy West.
Yeah,
because John Kirashofsky was doing the voice of Ren.
He was doing Ren.
He was doing Ren, and they just needed something to combat all the various Garfield and Friends and Darkwing Duck and, like you say, Freakazoids and Captain Power, and you're just like, well, not Captain Power, Captain Planet.
Well, you got to realize is that with that, you kind of see the basis of absurdist humor with Freakazoid and the Tick and all that stuff, because it kind of like subcutaneously spreads through these writers, that are writing these shows, the poopy humor. Like I say, it's the poopy humor factor,
Mm-hmm.
But it's like Ren and Stimpy, they got away with so much stuff.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Oh
and
God!
They were coming out with coloring books of that. And you're like, "Jeez, you want your kid coloring this?"
Look,
comic book.
Those goblins.
And literally have their mind shattered apart. Or, I mean, Cat Dog, I thought was freaky enough with when Cat tries to escape Dog by going through his own intestines. It's like, and freaking Ren and Stimpy are literally blowing each other to Kingdom Come, and it's like then they relaunch it later and add all this other restroom and sex humor. You're like, Jesus.
There was so much stuff you would watch, and you'd be like, you watch Ren and Stimpy, you're a teenager, you're watching Ren and Stimpy, a show that was meant for kids because it's very hyperactive. But as you're watching it, you're like clutching your sides because you're like, the part where they go camping and they go skinny dipping and the ranger jumps in with them. And you just see this big black bar, covering his genitals and stuff. You just see the butt, the top of the butt crack. And you're like, are they allowing this on Nickelodeon?
It's not on network TV half the time. They re-air it. It's at 2 a.m. It's a more tamer one, but yeah. And I definitely in the 2000s got used to them re-airing edited for UPN episodes of South Park, and that was bizarre. I was like, I mean, you took the dumbest or earlier episodes and basically just edited out 1 or 2 curses, and it's like, okay, but it's not the South Park we all know.
Well, and I think 97, 98. Well, we haven't touched on this, but Tom and I, when you were sick that one night, Tom and I talked about it. We said, first off, The Simpsons is going for about, 89, 93, 94, 5 years.
Oh yeah.
And there's a show called on Nickelodeon on MTV called, I think it was Liquid Television.
It had
Liquid Television.
Liquid something.
And
with Aeon Flux.
Yeah, Aeon Flux.
Oh yes.
Brad Detective. There were all these shows, but there's this little segment that comes on. These 2 kids who look like, the kids down the street you didn't want to play with. They're washing. They're doing this thing where they say it's called frog baseball, and Mike Judge and created Beavis and Butthead.
Mm-hmm.
That took off like a house on fire. Forgive the pun, because the kid did set his house on fire.
Yeah.
But that. And I love
where they're like, we need something for teens. That's because this is not for kids.
Well, what they did.
That was pretty cool.
My father and uncle watched the shit out of that. Drove my mother crazy. It got even more confusing because half the time they'd be playing music videos but mocking them.
Yeah.
My favorite, that Beavis and Butthead took off, and they became like, it was like a rocket ship. They just took off. And Mike Judge did Beavis and Butthead, and that was one of the greatest cartoons of all time. But MTV started to get into it with the Max.
Yes.
And the Head. You remember the Head?
The Head.
Oh, yes.
How they introduced, how they reminded the world that Winger wasn't much of a band.
Yeah. Like, they stink, But, Liquid Television, Beavis and Butthead, the Max, and the Head, they all kind of were like in this jumble of like alternative animation, and that was starting to really take off too.
Right. Adult Swim hadn't really launched yet, but it was just cool to see is like everybody's trying out something different. And instead of just even worried about being the next big thing, just give it time. Just have fun. We'll give you 2 years. Just be on again, off again, and no hesitation. If you want to continue, sure, we need someone to fill time. And they were less worried about ratings so much as just, let's just keep producing some new content. We got to get some new faces. We want to be the first one to discover this.
Well, there was a show that came on after Liquid Television called Cartoon.
Yes.
And you remember that show, right? It came out in like 90. I do. And they did Fast Driver instead of Speed Racer.
Oh man, that was years before the Geico ads.
And they did a parody of Meet the Beatles called Beat the Beatles.
Meet the Beatles, yes, I think I saw.
It was called Beat the Beatles. And it's like,
Beat the Beatles.
I want to hold it in my hand. I love and I love me. It's like really bad, like drawn version of the Beatles, and like, hey, look what we did, like that nasally Liverpudlian accent. But but they did that, and then Matt Groening. All right, they get rid of the Tick, they get rid of the Critic, and they put on Futurama. And I think Futurama at that time was way above what The Simpsons were doing when that came out.
Right. Jim Henson's experimenting with an adult sci-fi Lost in Space parody known as Farscape, and here's Futurama, which is basically just making fun of just all kinds of wacky things with a cursing robot and one-eyed chick.
What did you guys think of Futurama in that original run, that 4-year run?
I definitely saw reruns a lot on Comedy Central in the 2000s. I never really caught on to it as much as Simpsons, but there were moments where I'm like, yeah, basically any rejected Simpsons ideas, they come to Futurama. And it's like, you can do so many things with a lightsaber. You can do so many things with the trash can. And I definitely remember the bizarre scientist guy. Just always like,
good news, everyone.
Yeah, always eating something and doing something else just flat out bizarre. You're like, so you're basically making a poop monster or some shit.
Well, the thing was with that was that there's a little bit of a sad backstory. Zap Brannigan, the character of Zap Brannigan, was supposed to be played by Phil Hartman.
Ooh, I think I did hear that at one point.
And it
comes up.
Unfortunately, he was murdered before he could do the voices. So Billy West, they said to Billy West, okay, look, can you do a voice like Phil Hartman, like full of bravado, like Shatner, like every sort of space command? He's like, yes, I can, and it was based on the DJs that he heard where they were called, they were like dinosaur DJs, guys with balls. They carried in, wheelbarrows, those guys. They talked very low and very deep. Hi, my name is Bob. So
I'm Gary Owen.
Yes, like Gary Owen.
Gary Owen, yeah. Space Ghost never left the building.
But
Don't you find it also wild how, I mean, we talked about how many 80s R-rated PG-13 movies became kid-friendly cartoons. I'm surprised they never made a stupid Terminator one, for God's sakes, but I just find it even wilder how, they re-edit Ren and Stimpy later on for Spike TV, and like you say, they do all this other adult humor and what's supposed to be PG level material with all the other ones. I just find it wild how Fox was airing reruns of Tales from the Crypt like 2 years after it came out, and there's a good podcast on it now by the head writers called How Not to Make a Movie, where they talk about that. It's like they reconfirmed what other articles had talked about back in the day, how it's like they would always shoot alternate scenes for, because they knew they wanted to syndicate it, and Showtime never played well with syndicating its material, but HBO did a lot. But I find it so wild how there was a Tales from the Crypt cartoon. I definitely recall.
Oh
vaguely.
yeah,
yep, Tales from the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
They did like one season, then they like relaunched it as like another totally different kind of show, but same animators in Canada.
But if you want to know something, the Tales from the Crypt Keeper show that taught everybody valuable lessons. He would tell you what the lesson was. But the thing was, I love to have John Kassir doing the voice of the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah, he had already cameoed as the Crypt Keeper and parodies on Tiny Toons, and here he is. He's having to downplay the typical persona. The Tales from the Crypt Keeper show, I thought was great to watch. I thought it was fun. There were so many good little stories they wrote, but it was like a Twilight Zone show, Right.
Yeah.
The moral of the story: don't put money over friends.
Yeah. That's the one.
Both ways before crossing the street.
Or you'll end up in a vortex, trapped.
But Fox was becoming more of the nighttime animated stuff because they brought in the Simpsons, they brought in Futurama.
I gotta say, whoever it is who voices the Crypt Keeper on Robot Chicken, you did a damn good job imitating John Kassir.
Yeah,
John Kassir. I think that is him.
Oh, he's reprising. Okay, I thought it was the same guy who does all the Shatner and Keanu Reeves impressions. Okay,
no, I think that's John Kassir doing it.
Sweet.
But then there's South Park comes out in '97, and that's all cut animation.
Yep.
And I had the videotape of Jesus versus Santa.
yeah.
I had the video cassette. Somebody said
you can still find a bunch of them at thrift stores. They're like collector's items. Like, hey,
it's hilarious. I'm like, what? It was like Jesus fights Santa, but it's like these like it's like cut out animation you would have done like on your computer.
Mm-hmm.
You just filmed it,
making fun of how anyone can do cartoons at that point, and making use of this because it's so low budget. They could get so many voice actors in that were better known, and so damn tragic. Whoever it is who was like Stan's mom and doing all the other female voices, how she killed herself shortly after the movie came out, and you're like, God damn it, she was talented.
Yeah, forgot her name.
I knew it at one point, but it was very similar to Charles Rocket,
But she was the voice of Daphne or Velma on one of the Scooby-Doo shows.
That's what it was. Yeah, she was from the Hanna-Barbera camp, and they hired her as like part of a joke, and they just were a big fan of hers. I can look it up real fast. I was like,
yeah, try to see who it is. But South Park was just so. I mean, they've been going on like over 25 years now.
Even when I see them, when I'm not in a mood to like watch a cartoon or something like that, I'm just like, I just appreciate the ballsy moves, and it's just. I know Bill Hader says is like he's most proud of that the most, even more than his time on SNL, because it's like, yeah, I got to be a story editor and be part of this Emmy-winning crew. Even Jonathan Kimmel, Jimmy's brother,
doing South Park.
Yeah, Jonathan Kimmel would just cut returns back and forth on the writing staff, and he was one of the lead writers on his brother's talk show, and would direct all the music concert events. But yeah, Bill Hader was doing a lot of the story writing as well. So like basically any of his rejected gags on SNL that basically ended up on there. It's like they didn't want to tackle it this week, so we're going to do an even better job here.
Yeah.
What was was that girl's name? That woman's name? I keep forgetting it.
I'm looking it up. Female actress, South Park suicide.
Yeah.
Yes, exact keywords, guys. It was tragic. She was like, it's like in her 40s or some shit.
She had a medical problem or something like that, from what I remember.
Yeah. Mary Kay Bergman.
Yes, that was it. Yeah, Mary Kay
voiced over 400 TV ads and over 100 cartoon, film, and video game. God damn, she's a doll.
We'll return after these messages.
Hello and welcome to Culture Shocked, the pop culture podcast brought to you by four aging millennials and our outdated opinions. Join us every Tuesday as we discuss movies, TV, games, and even music, new and old.
Dude, what do you think you're doing?
Are you seriously trying to record a promo without us right now?
Well, yeah.
Dude, you can't just do the promo by yourself. Who's gonna listen to that?
Yeah, and you probably haven't even told them that we're a pop culture podcast where we always agree on everything. For instance, the Sam Raimi trilogy, easily being the best of the Spider-Man movies.
No. But I think we can all agree that Jaws is a classical masterpiece.
Nope, don't like that. But we do all agree that the sequel trilogy of Star Wars is the best in the Skywalker saga, right, guys?
That comment is so ridiculous. I don't even know where to
Anyways, that'll do it from all of us here at Culture Shock. Thanks for listening.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast recs and booty debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
We let things pile up in the DVR. We add them to our queues. We wait for the DVDs and Blu-rays. We time shift. The Time Shifters Podcast. Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, superheroes, comedy, action, film, television, maybe some not-so-current events. Find us on iTunes or at timeshifterspodcast.com.
Cool thing about Blind Knowledge is we are in multiple countries. We are worldwide all across the globe. We are in the US, we are in the UK, we are in Canada, Germany, India, Japan. We're in Australia, y'all. BlindKnowledge.com. Now back to the feature presentation.
Who was she on?
Okay, so she voiced. Yes, you're right. Daphne in Free Films from the Scooby-Doo franchise, and Timmy Turner in the Oh Yeah cartoons. There you go. Minor characters in The Simpsons, and let's see who she was on South Park. I think it was Stan's mom, but I could be wrong.
No, she was Cartman's mom.
Cartman's mom, yes, okay. She was credited as Shannon Cassidy for some reasons, but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's right. She did voices for The New Adventures of Zorro, Recess, and the Spider-Man cartoon. JJ the Jet Plane. She was JJ.
JJ, the jet plane went boom.
Secret Files of the
Because it was Dynamite.
Dynamite. She was the Queen Bug in the Men in Black cartoon show, which I love the hell out of because Vincent D'Onofrio came back as his character. Wild Thornberries and Secret Files of the Spy Dogs. I'm sure you might remember. Man, she was even on Buzz Lightyear. That's another one. When that came out, I was like, it's not the same, but it's kind of interesting to see them. And we played the hell out of the video game. My brother and I, we played one of the video games a lot.
Well, what do you? I mean, when you think about our anime, like the cartoons that now, cartoons we're starting, alternative animation or these shows that were coming out of nowhere, and I think the last good gasp of like anime, like a great show that just came out of nowhere, was Family Guy.
Yeah,
and
because it definitely took a while for you to realize, wow, they're making fun of all kinds of things.
Love it or hate it, it was just so well done.
Yeah,
it was very funny. And sorry, go ahead.
There's also, I also saw a resurgence in it, and like starting in the mid '90s with what I call the game cartoons. It's got Pokemon, Digimon, and also Yu-Gi-Oh. Those kind of started to seep in, and that's what gave Saturday morning animation a shot in the arm that it needed to get it over the hump.
They basically,
and then after that, it was.
They'd take all these Buck Rogers or Alien Nation kind of ideas and just kind of experiment with it. Do you remember? I know you guys are going to remember this one, but here's another one. I have vague recollection of it. I don't know if it was on PBS or ABC. It had Tim Daly, and it was like a World War III kind of scenario show.
Whoa.
It's a wild one. Let me look it up.
You remember Reboot? Remember that show, Reboot?
Reboot.
Yes.
Oh man.
Reboot.
The show.
Also one. Yeah.
Okay. Invasion America.
Yeah.
That's the one. But yeah, that and Reboot is like basically anything that no one wanted to do in live action form, but was still an easy to do. It was like, if you don't want to make an Earth 2 or Tracks or whatever, it was like, just take a bunch of likable voice actors, some has-been actors, and just put them on a easy to syndicate cartoon that we can put on PBS or Fox.
Or the old joke was, if you want to get somebody good, get Michael Ironside to be in any cartoon you want to. Have him play a drill sergeant or somebody in those shows,
That'll be a ha-ha for your parents who grew up watching Scanners and Total Recall. I mean,
or having R. Lee Ermey in Family Guy as the guy who's the trainer for the Knights in the one episode where Peter has to fight the Black Knight, and you're like,
yes.
The idea of a geocentric universe gets you sexually aroused, sir. Yes, sir.
He never let go of that, and I mean, I watched Toy Story the hell out of it growing up. I was like, so I was never really surprised when I looked him up. I'm like, yeah, what has he not played? He never Full Metal Jacket never left him. He just has always got to
I
play.
I met him in real life.
Oh, man.
We were in a bar one night, me and my friends. I don't know how the hell he was in there. And I said, "You're Gunny Hartman, aren't you?" I'm like, "Can you go over there and just tell my we were in college. I'm like, can you go over my difference and do the freaking speech?" So he comes over, he does the entire speech verbatim. And I'm like, I'm laughing. We're all laughing.
You will not pout.
Yeah, we were all laughing, because he couldn't do all this stuff like for the soldiers, like Private Snowball and stuff like that.
He was just dick, Private.
Yeah, I said, just do the 10, all the stuff. But the great thing was that every time I'd see him in a cartoon, it was either he was doing, he played Wildcat on what was it, the Batman TV show.
Yes.
He played Wildcat. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, he's playing. If you knew who Wildcat was in the DC Comics.
Oh yeah.
He was the boxer and he had 9 lives or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they had it where Batman, it's like Batman and the Outsiders, because it's Katana and Geoforce and like Wildcat has to train them, and Wildcat almost dies.
Yeah.
And they bring him back to life, and it was R. Lee Ermey, man. I thought that was really cool of him,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when you think, Tom brought up the game show, the kid game factor in that, and it was you said it was Yu-Gi-Oh. Well, Pokemon's the big one.
Sometimes they do that with all the live action shows, like all that is like do a mock game show and then sometimes sneak in a cartoon show, or like Ninja Turtles on Power Rangers, have a character in a mask and a bodysuit, in live action form,
But Yu-Gi-Oh! I remember, and what was the other one? Digimon
and Pokemon. They had that rivalry going, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Was kind of just if you didn't want to be part of either fandom but still wanted to play cards with your friends, it was like predicted Magic the Gathering, but this was their first.
And then they did Dragon Ball and
Dragon Ball, yeah.
Yes.
And Dragon Ball Z, the last episode, I never could get that. So basically, the Earth is recreated again, and then he finds somebody who's, it was like, I was like, come on, you did this whole big thing. Now, at the end, it's like, what happened? But Pokemon was the big one because Pokemon had all these little cute animals.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I would watch it sometimes because I'd be like, half asleep in the morning, waking up, trying to find something. I'd be like, oh, these are cute little animals. Oh, gee. Oh my God, I'm having a seizure,
Oh man. And I watched it for a while and then I got sick of the theme show, and then Digimon had some better video games, but then it also got annoying how over complex its storyline we get at times where you're just like, God damn it, I don't want to follow the human storylines. I want to see these animals fight each other.
I have
Animal Planet, but PG.
What do I have? I've got 2 keychains. One is Squirtle and one is Pikachu that my ex-wife got me when we were like dating. And I was like, oh, great reminders. But what's weird? What's weird though? They had Pokemon going, I think maybe 3 years into it, and then they did a thing called Robots for Everyone. I forgot the name of that one.
Yes, they were trying to steal that Transformers money, basically.
It was Cubics,
yes.
And Bill said Metabots.
Megabots, and at that time that was pretty much the only thing that didn't leave. It was like they would incorporate a toy, because that's at the end of the day, it's a toy commercial, but at the same time, like sometimes it's like they didn't even really mess with the cartoon as much. They just focused more on the product. Like Zoids was kind of that, trying to steal that Lego money.
Yep. Spiral Zone,
basically
Exo Squad.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. There are even so many PlayStation and Nintendo games that it's so wild how the Super Mario Brothers and even Sonic from Sega, they had their cartoon shows. But I'm surprised, I really am, because some of those same voice actors from Nickelodeon Cartoon Network would show up in these. But I'm surprised that they never made, a Jak and Daxter or Ratchet and Clank or even a freaking Spyro the Dragon type, Saturday morning cartoon. That would have been a perfect tie-in for those who didn't play video games.
I would have seen Star Fox. That would have been really great.
Star Fox would have been so amazing. That's a good call. And I heard a rumor they might be making a movie, but I could be wrong.
But they did Wing Commander, a cartoon of Wing Commander.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
And that didn't last. Mark
Hamill come back?
I don't know. I don't remember. But the funny thing is, I was thinking about this before, how everybody was saying what happened to Mark Hamill after Star Wars. And then one day I'm like, oh, who's doing the voice of the Joker? Oh my God. And I'm like, my father's like, oh, he needs the money. I'm like, Dad, I don't think he needs the money. I think this is probably going to be a real cushy gig for him. Because my father would always think if you were doing cartoon voiceovers, you needed the money. It was the Chico Marx formula. He needed the money, but like, man. I remember watching Batman and Tom and Cam, you guys could remember this episode that was really, really good. It's like the 4th or 5th episode, The Gray Ghost.
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Gray Ghost, voiced by Adam West.
Yes.
Adam West.
He returned.
And they did that because, number 1, he's the original Batman to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And number 2, he got slighted by Tim Burton's Batman.
Yeah.
So, because remember, he was saying, I could have played Batman. I'm like, yeah, but it's different Batman, different style.
Yeah.
But to have the Gray Ghost team up with Batman, and to hear Adam West's voice again was just like, it's like they did with Super Friends. They brought Adam West back to be Batman. This was now Adam West passing the torch to Kevin Conroy.
Totally.
You know,
and it was just what the fan service needed at that point, and it was so. The animated series was on for about 4 years.
Yeah.
5 years? Yeah, and
5 years.
And like you say, they had the Batman and Robin cartoon show, which made everyone forget about the infamous 90s movie for the most part, I guess. And I watched a ton of that, and Batman Beyond, and not Beyond. Batman Beyond. And I just found it so cool. I was like, okay, so Bruce Wayne is now training, this new guy, and every once in a while you'll see an awesome cosplay that someone has done. You're like, man, why have they not made a movie or the cult fandom is out there for this version of the character,
Well, they did that. Then they did the best thing ever. They did Justice League, and I thought Justice League was just unbelievable.
Probably even the best iteration, like the best DC cartoon. Like,
well, then they turned it up a notch with Justice League Unlimited, where we got to see all these characters we had wanted to see for a long time, and the best ones were the guys that like Shining Knight, Green Arrow, Black Canary.
My brother or sister would sometimes even put it on casually. My brother would get done watching sports for the night and just wanted something to watch on Cartoon Network. I would watch a bunch of it here and there too. My uncle especially was a big comic book fan, and I definitely like to say, like, from especially the 04 to 06 years, those were cool in that they were kind of even trying to rival other giant sci-fi shows at times. It seemed as like this is our Cartoon Network's Battlestar Galactica. We are setting all this comic book stuff in motion. We're gonna have an all-out giant battle finale.
Well, the great thing was at the end, when you look at it, they brought in so many great characters. They brought in Warlord for the first time. They brought in Vandal Savage. They brought in Captain Marvel and the
better version of Darkseid. Yeah,
Darkseid. Michael Ironside is Darkseid, who's been doing it
great.
since the animated series. Great,
make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
To have what you call the guy from Laughing, Artie Johnson playing
yes,
Wunderbar, and having Lou.
Eric Roberts was on one as one character.
Yeah, he wasn't Mongol. He was the other guy.
Steppenwolf?
No, not Steppenwolf. It was the Warworld episode. I remember it very well.
And just the fact that you could see again, just the amazing, smart gorilla character just be well realized as well.
Oh, Gorilla Grodd, yeah.
Gorilla Grodd is like, he had never been done justice before, but I think after everyone saw that cartoon, you're like, yes, you can do this. And
well, the one I loved was Ultra Humanite. Did you ever see the Christmas episode?
Yeah, they did a Christmas episode, but I saw another episode he was in, and he was awesome.
There's a Christmas episode. Flash has to get this toy for these kids from Japan, for these kids at an orphanage that he's donated for. And it breaks, right? I think it breaks when he's having a fight with others. So he says to the Ultra Humanite, he says, "Can you fix this?" He's like, "Yes, I can, Flash. If you just give me some time, I'll do it." So he's like, so he gets it back from him. He's like, "Here you go." He's like, "You didn't, Flash. It is Christmas." So what he does is he puts in the story of the Nutcracker. They press the toy and the Nutcracker starts playing for all these kids, and all these kids are enraptured by it. It was just a sweet. And then they had where Martian Manhunter came to Clark Kent's house for Mom and Pop Kent for Christmas. I mean, there were so many good episodes. My favorite episode of that one was when they're trying to look for Wonder Woman. As she was transformed.
Wonder Woman was well realized on there. I was a big fan of Hawk Girl.
Hawk Girl.
Yes.
My favorite character on that show was Martian Manhunter. I loved Martian Manhunter.
Totally.
And the last episode they ever did, where it was the bad guys and the good guys team up to defeat Darkseid.
Yes, that was again,
and to see Superman beat the bejesus out of Darkseid, and he gives that speech of, I feel like I've been living in a world of paper. And he does that whole speech. But this is the one time I'm going to let loose. And he punches Darcy. Darcy goes flying through like 12 buildings.
Yep.
But the voice cast they had, it was Tim Daly.
Reprising his Superman role.
No. Then they had another guy come in to do Superman. Because Tim Daly left. George
Phil Lamar was Green Lantern.
Greenberg or something like that.
Phil Lamar was Green Lantern. Carl Lumley was
Michael Rosenbaum was the Flash. But yeah, Carl Lumley from Cagney and Lacey. Yeah. And Clancy Brown was still playing Lex Luthor, but it was wild seeing Brainiac be played by Corey Burden.
Yeah. But I loved when when you find out it's the guy who played, it's like wait, who's playing Lex Luthor? Him?
Yep.
I saw it's Mr.
Lois
Krabs.
Lane
Mr.
is
Mr.
Krabs, and Lois Lane was Dana Delaney, and Bulldozer was Ted Levine for Silence of the Lambs. But get this, here's one that I did not know that many people might know now. Jason Blood was portrayed by Michael T. Weiss from The Pretender.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding. And he played it again on Unlimited, and then came back and did some voices for. He played Captain Atom on Young Justice, and Adam Strange on Batman: The Brave and the Bold. So, yeah.
I loved Brave and the Bold. I liked Brave and the Bold.
It was so much fun. Return to the Adam West type thing.
But the best part about Brave and the Bold was the last episode, where it's just the last episode. They're kind of like deconstructing, like Batman goes, look, it's just, and it was weird. I think it was Weird Al Yankovic doing the voice of Batmite. No, Paul Rubens was doing Batmite, and somebody was doing something else.
It had a very inspired voice cast of various comedians.
Oh yeah,
and they did a little joke on Ted McGinley taking over the voice of Aquaman. Now the show can finally get canceled.
Oh,
and then Ted McGinley goes, "No, it's not going to get canceled. In fact, when I joined another cast with Married with Children, the show lasted a lot longer."
Oh,
and they're like, so that was the joke, Ted McGinley, but
yeah, it's because it's true. Yeah. I mean, I even heard Paquette Brewster on a recent
Ambush Bug. That's who it was. Ambush Bug kept jumping.
Bug. But that's so true.
Around with Batmite, yeah.
At that time, any actor, if you were on a show and you're on like 3 different ones that got canceled, you would be mocked by producers and you were called the show killer. And I heard Paquette Brewster confirm that in a interview on Andy Richter's podcast. And he's like, God damn it, stop calling us the show killer. So yeah, Ted McGinley had to make fun of that. So that sucks that he had to,
But what gets me is that after Batman, there's a cartoon between Brave and the Bold and the Batman, which is
the Batman.
There's Legion of Superheroes, which should have stayed on longer.
Yeah,
but it didn't have that drawing power.
It was weird. It was like half the time, like anything they thought was going to be more complex, it couldn't be on the WB or kids, WB in the morning. It had to be on Cartoon Network.
Well, they WB pulled the plug on that, but I thought that was a great show to watch because the Legion of Superheroes, that was a comic book I grew up with. I'm sure, Tom, you grew up with it.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I definitely recall seeing some of it. I saw a lot of Static Shock, especially in reruns. I grew to really like it. And then it got to where it's kind of a shame. I think because they expunged so many of those DC cartoons, basically just about anyone, if you don't know the classic Cartoon Network shows, then basically all you watched on there was Ben 10 and all those other ones. It's like, I never watched
Cartoon
Ben 10, really.
Cartoon Network was great in the 90s because of the fact that they had so many shows on like Johnny Bravo, which I thought was great.
Yes.
Johnny Bravo, name anyone in high school in the 90s.
Powerpuff Girls.
Powerpuff Girls. So there you go. I can't think of any junior high or high schooler who, I can't think of any guy who didn't want to be Bravo. He was the adorable idiot who wanted to be cool as hell and was the Elvis wannabe.
And to hear Brenda Vaccaro doing the voice of his mother.
Yes.
And I was like, Brenda Vaccaro's doing the voice of his mother? I'm like, yeah, like, oh yeah, that's her. I could tell her raspy voice anywhere, you know.
That's definitely where Seth MacFarlane got his start. I think he was like a assistant writer, animator.
He was assistant writer on that show, and then he did a show called Life with Larry, which was on Cartoon. And if you guys have ever seen it, it's on the internet. It's kind of like the pilot episode because it's a talking dog and a complete dullard.
I think I saw 5 seconds of it because it was just on after Bravo. But
I watched it I was up at about 6 o'clock in the morning. I remember it was during a snowstorm, and I had to go shovel, and my mother wasn't up yet, and my dad wasn't up yet, and I was watching it, and I'm like, what? And Family Guy had just been pulled. It just been pulled off the air.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I'm watching, I'm like, oh my God, is this new or is this old? And I realized it's older. He did it as like a test run for what he was going to do with Family Guy.
Test out his material, see how it is in cartoon form.
And the jokes he had were just so off the wall. He says, if you don't understand what they're going to do to me, they're going to euthanize me. Yeah, but what the heck does kids in Asia have anything to do with you? You know,
this dark stuff that no one can joke about nowadays. Yeah.
But it's like,
and I'd also be remiss if we didn't mention the impact that Cartoon Network had with Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
That was my jam. That was like one of the few things that was Adult Swim was trying to steal that, South Park humor. But I think the funny thing is like, him and Harvey Birdman were just interested because it's like, yeah, they're taking some of the existing footage and adding new footage and some of the same voice actors.
And then later on, they started to do actual animation.
Yeah.
But that entire block was
set the bar
spun
is
so
like,
much off.
You can be funny, and I mean, I am glad that Eric Andre had acknowledged it. He's like, yeah, without Space Ghost, my show would not have existed.
Well, the thing that gets me is like they take a show like C-Lab 2020, and
C-Lab was wild.
And they took that footage and they said, all right, let's just dub in other. And that's where Eric Estrada kind of made his comeback.
Yeah, him and that's where the Archer guys got started. My pal Tony even swears by is like, hey, I love me some Archer, but Frisco Dingo is where it was at.
Frisky Dingo, yes.
Frisky Dingo.
And it's just so funny. It's like, because like you're seeing with, again, like you said earlier, how you're seeing Seth MacFarlane just try different channels, different types of humor and different types of crowds. And it's like same kind of thing with them. It's like they got kind of light and dumb. And then you see Frisco Dingo and Archer is like, man, they can get dark. Without even meaning to. It's dark.
We can look at all the cartoons like Mike Judge, Beavis and Butthead. Then that spins off, King of the Hill, which I thought was one of the best shows on TV.
And Daria,
for that time, and Daria. Everybody forgets about Daria, but you got to think with Adult Swim. They took a chance on a lot of shows that are now that either were good or not good. Like if you look at something like Tim and Eric,
oh yes,
Tom Goes to the Mayor, which is one of the I think one of the strangest,
wackiest ones,
wackiest things ever. And then they do a show called Tim and Eric. Awesome, great job, awesome, great show, awesome job.
TV you watch in hell. Yep.
It was funny, but there were these two guys, Doc Hammer and Jackson Public, and they created this show called The Venture Brothers. Venture Brothers was if you didn't get any of the references they put in those scripts, you must have been living in a bubble, because first off, the knockoff of Johnny Quest, to have to have the two kids look like the Hardy Boys.
There was something for everybody, but I only saw parts of it here and there because it was on much, much later, sometimes at 2.
I always saw Hank and Dean as being dressed like Fred from Scooby-Doo and Peter Parker.
Well, here's the joke. There's one episode, they open up the pods that they're in because they're clones. You know, we all know they're clones.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, okay, Hank is dressed up as Aquaman. He's got blonde hair. Dean's dressed up as Peter Parker. If you look at Peter Parker when Steve Ditko was doing it, that's what he looks like. He's got like the square haircut and everything.
They have the animation homages basically. He's like, here's the art style, pulling a Warhol.
and then Dean actually ran into a superhero in New York, which was based on Spider-Man. I think it's like Brown Recluse or something like that.
Something like that.
And there was a whole joke around about how he would spin his webs out of his ass.
Yep. And unfortunately, I would see Venture Brothers now and again, but unfortunately they just wanted to kind of mix it up with other clutter like Squidbillies. And you're like, no. Put on some of these other wacky shows that have some fun, clever storyline. And like you say, it is interesting seeing them experiment and test the waters. Anything too violent for Toonami just goes on Adult Swim after all the first 3 hours of cartoons.
Well, the thing I love now is that I think Toonami used to be doing on Saturdays was doing Japanese animation,
right? Yeah. And basically, they got competitive. Like Adult Swim passed on Archer because they're like, no one will ever want to watch a animated spy show. I'm like, but FX wasn't known for animation, and they took it under their wing. So it's just so wild how what one person passed on. You're like, yeah, you guys deserve to, you
deserve to suck on it,
right?
Well, the thing that cracks me up is like Archer's now this show that's like, Archer's become this big,
people want to actually watch reruns of Ironside,
or my favorite is when he goes, I was just reading, what was that book? He says, Bartleby the Scrivener. Anyone? Bartleby the Scrivener? Anyone? How many times can you get away with a reference like that? But,
the fact that he's basically Austin Powers, but just even more off color is
But the thing I love about that is like now it's become everybody I know, even people who weren't into animation or cartoons are starting to dig this stuff. I've seen people I know say, "Oh God, I loved watching that. I love watching that show. I love watching that show."
I know John Benjamin and Aisha Tyler said that the live shows that they would do really killed, but I think they just would always just sell out, and they had complex schedules, and then of course they all want to do 3 other shows that same year, so it was hard to
Is Archer still on, or did they?
Still on.
How are they going to do it with? How are they still going to do without Jessica Walter though?
Ooh, good question. Maybe reuse some clips, narrate it, but maybe
bring in somebody different.
It's been one of those like the creator kept stepping down, but he kept like being a consultant from afar, saying whatever you do, the storyline's going this way, and I just like how, like you said, is like it's breaking through different aspects of humor, and because like you guys have already illustrated, is like the 70s groundbreaking, it's a new thing. 80s, you have a mixture of some bad, some infamy, and then you got a lot of great, just epicness and other toy commercials. And then 90s is like, let's experiment with different kinds of humor. Let's mix in live action with cartoons, different types of 2D and 3D animation, and by the 2000s, again, you're continuing a lot of the greatness of the 80s and the 90s, and then mashing it with just other stuff is like that. Were they to do now, how would you do it now? Like, I don't think Spike TV, now it's Paramount Network, has it in them to do something like Afro Samurai.
No,
that's just not in them. It's too over the top. Even for Cartoon Network to show something like Bleach, that's going to be a while. Before they show something like that.
I mean, the thing was, if it wasn't for Cartoon Network, I don't think a lot of us know about, a lot of the Japanese stuff that was coming over.
Yeah, unless you went to Sam's Club or, any local Funimation Chinatown store that had imported it. You didn't have access to it.
I mean, you'll never see the Overfiend on Cartoon Network unless
Sci-Fi Channel would show edited versions of Ghost in the Shell and Akira, but it's like, you didn't have access to it unless you had a movie
Cinemax one time showed Tank Police.
Really?
Yeah, man. It was on Cinemax After Dark. I'm like, why is this on Cinemax After Dark? I'm usually seeing like really bad softcore European and adult movies. And this is on.
Oh,
And
no, I got to ask you this. Okay, so friends of the show, Corey and Zach would know back in the 80s how there'd just be just outrageous, movie advisories before the program starts. How many of you would see like any of those movies that were playing and they wouldn't just say, strong or intense. They said extreme sexual content.
Okay. All right. Can I explain this to you? I watched Showtime After Dark and Cinemax After Dark, right?
Oh yeah.
And I will say this right now. They would draw you in with that little warning, and then it was just like
Cinemax had the damn where you had the breast outlays with the mystical blue background and the music playing.
Cinemax After Dark was they would show a shade pull up and a woman would be like, oh, you get, and then you'd watch Emmanuel.
For your eyes only, yeah.
No, yeah, something and then Showtime would show and this is getting off the show. Showtime would show the really off the wall European 70s. Oh God, I can't believe this was made kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
But
and then it's by 95 or even 2002, it's we cannot show that anymore. We're gonna get pulled somehow.
Well,
some congressman has pressured us.
They pulled that off because they basically lost the licensing to a lot of the movies, and not only that, but the guys in HBO, they were getting bought. Remember, there were all these buyouts, so they were just okay, we're going to stop that, we're going to stop that, we're going to stop that, we're going to stop that.
So vice president of programmings, and it's wild how Showtime and HBO would then try to do. I know Mike Judge came out with a very off-color dark comedy show a few years ago, but yeah, that.
What was that show?
I forget the name of it, but it was it was a bizarre one title name, and everyone kind of wanted to follow in the footsteps of Spawn, but
oh yeah, I remember Spawn the cartoon. Yeah,
it was the best version of it still to this day. No one can touch it, but I do find it funny how, like you say, is you get the warning and the bizarre backgrounds, and I just find it so funny how their other shows on that network would parody it. Oz would make fun of other off-color stuff. It's hey, we get HBO this summer in prison. But I find it even funnier how Adult Swim would kind of make fun of that in a way too. Do you guys remember how they'd show promos saying, it's adults only, kids leave the pool?
Yeah, I remember that.
That was and the next thing you know, you see the tamest stuff, like you say, Space Ghost or home movies, and then it's a while before they would play something like Adult Swim.
Well, they did
Family Guy.
They did at home movies. They did Baby Blues, because I remember they were getting all the shows that were pulled off, 13 episodes, and that was it. Home movies was great. Yeah. Baby Blues was great. And then they would do these one-off ones that were really weird. They did one called Perfect Hair, which was a takeoff on it was this thing where this kid is balding, but he's got to find the perfect. I mean, it was just so weird to watch. And we were watching it one night, my ex-wife and I, and we were like, "What the hell was that about?"
I don't know.
And from what I understand, Cartoon Network got so many complaints about it. And they were like, well, we were just trying, and they're like, no. And we're like, no, never show that again. I think they put it on later. But the one thing I loved was when they would show Chuck Norris Karate Commandos.
Yep. Mr. T Show and Chuck Norris.
Or they did one where they were playing Saved by the Bell, where it was the most outrageous episode, the one where Jesse gets high on caffeine pills. Does anybody remember that one?
I remember that one.
I'm so excited. And I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control. And I think I'm oh, God. Oh, my God.
They should have put that on the Conan O'Brien pulled the lever skit.
No, Paul Rudd. You know how Paul Rudd does, right?
Yeah, they did the Mac and Me clip.
Mac and Me, where the kid flies off the wheelchair.
Oh my God! And how did it even start? It's he's not even in the goddamn movie.
He's like, "Can I show you a clip from my new movie?" Yeah, sure. And it's Mac and Me, and I'm like, "Oh my God!"
I can tell that Conan O'Brien's writers pretty much just what some of them would just basically watch just the trashiest movies at late night hours, just coming up with ideas.
But when to go back on the cartoons, where cartoons aren't dead. They're not dead.
They're not dying anytime soon.
They're not going to die. They're not. I mean, they're going to be rerun. They're going to be, they're on streaming. They're on Tubi. They're on Pluto. You're going to catch.
You're collecting them.
It's a collector's item, yeah.
And Blu-ray form and all that. And, I mean, just the other day, I picked up the complete series of Thundar the Barbarian on DVD. And just
how much?
Even a few years ago, I want to say it was like less than $20.
Okay.
Nice.
This is the official release, not a bootleg or anything like that?
Yep, official release.
Okay. I got to say this, Rubby Spears, they knocked it out of the park with Thundar the Barbarian.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And even today, when with the geek culture kind of coming up, you're going to see some of those old shows come back up, like even the stuff that was back in the 70s, and they put Shazam on Tubi, for the love of Pete.
Oh yeah.
And people are watching it. It's being some new eyes on it. They're just with streaming services, with Amazon being able to find just about any kind of animation you could think of, and the reruns, and the culture right now gravitates more towards I would like to say that they're gravitating more towards the inner child in all of us. So we're going to go back and look and find those old cartoons.
And then you rediscover why you liked it in the first place. It wasn't just, I was a kid, I was the target audience. It's like, no, it was magical. And you can't capture that.
Well,
yeah.
What, Tom, when I was watching Shazam on Tubi, I was watching it like last Friday. I'm watching it. It's a pristine copy. They must have gotten a cleaned up copy of it.
Shout Factory and Severin has definitely helped. See that.
Yeah. I think it's the DVD from Warner's.
Yeah, that's what I'm betting.
And Warner has been pretty interactive with all their out of print movie and TV titles. They have done the whole manufactured on demand option, and they can give you a digital copy that you play on your Apple TV or Amazon Fire. So
like seeing Super Friends again on and going through that whole. Tom, you and I both are big Super Friends fans.
Oh yes,
I love Super Friends.
Watching that whole genesis from when it went from the core five, with Wendy and Marvin and Wonder Dog, to when it went to I think when it was Galactic Guardians, Superpowers team. That was great to see. That's great to watch. Because and I got to tell you something. There was one episode they did where Wonder Woman went in undercover as Diana Prince with Apache Chief, and she says, "I have to change into Wonder Woman," and all of a sudden you hear da 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 da, and they started doing Wonder Woman theme, and she twirled around, and boom, she became Wonder Woman. But what they did was on Justice League or Justice League Unlimited, there's something going on or something like that, and she all of a sudden you see she runs into a corner, takes off her glasses and twirls around, and they did that, and that was so great to see that, because these writers, they remember that stuff when we were younger. These are guys that watch TV, and we were like, boom, that's what we got to do.
Pay tribute to the OG.
Yeah, and on top of that, you're dealing with more. We have some more adult themed cartoons that still retain at least some of that magic. One of my favorites is Black Dynamite, because that was a movie,
very cool cartoon.
And the animation style is so perfect on it. The cast is so perfect.
Even the ads, I would just be watching again Adult Swim, and I'd have family come in and they'd see part of the ads. You're like, what is that? That is so fucking hysterical. I'm just like, we got to watch the full episode. And I really do like what they did with Mike Tyson's
Mysteries. Yes.
Just a perfect, Scooby-Doo parody, perfect voice cast.
Was Norm Macdonald on that?
Yeah, he was the voice of Pigeon, and the pigeon named Pigeon. And it was just so funny.
What are they gonna do now with him gone? I mean, it's like,
I don't know if they were going to renew it or not, but it would be cool to see some kind of reunion and use some unused takes. But I mean, I just liked how it was making fun of those Chuck Norris Karate Commandos, Mr. T type shows, and and just have a live action insert what's basically a failed PSA, and you're like, that's a whole bunch of gibberish, but it's fucking funny as hell, and it's just I do like how they do this once in a while, like because again, Cartoon Network, like you guys have said, it just lost so many of us when they were just doing such lazy stuff like Codename Kids Next Door and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. I was like, who is the audience for this? This is just mean-natured and lame, and like Ed, Edd and Eddy, that was the last hurrah for me, where I was like, okay, I love these free bumbling idiots and the over-the-top music that plays when they lose their temper, and when they play pranks on each other, where like there's that one episode where the town is like flat out like totally abandoned, and Eddie doesn't know if he's just been an asshole and pissed everyone off, or if they're just all playing a prank on him. They got a plank named Plank.
The thing is, to me, is that Cartoon Network to me died out when they started doing live action movies, and I want to see cartoons. I want to see. I want to Spider-Man
on in the middle of the day, and you're like, or Cats and Dogs was another one. Like, put that on another channel. Don't put it on Cartoon Network.
Yeah,
because on Adult Swim, part of the joke is that it's basically live action Space Ghost. That's part of the thing. But yeah, the other stuff, like you say, is like that did get old.
I mean, I've always said this, and I said if I ever had money and I ever had my way, I would go and I would get all the Sid and Marty Krofft stuff, all the stuff that Hanna-Barbera did, all the stuff that Filmation did, and all the stuff and make a cartoon channel that brings all this stuff back to where it was.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing it all back home.
Pull a Pluto, pull a Plex, Tubi.
Yeah, have people watch Wonderbug and Magic Mongo and the Krofft Superstar Show. Have people watch the Bugaloos and HR Puff and stuff. Have people watch Drac Pack and Mighty Man and Yuck Yuck.
The Brack Show.
Yes.
Laugh at hysterically.
Mill Creek does seem to be doing a lot of good Blu-ray remasters, so that's been helping, because they're basically just like, hey, the studios are interested, but if we give them money, they will do it, and we can remaster the sound and video as best we can.
Does anybody remember Space Ghost Coast to Coast when Joel Hodgson appeared?
Mm-hmm.
I do, yes.
And in the later 2000s, they'd even replay a blurb that had Jack Black. That was like their promo for the show. It's like, look, we're getting bigger celebrities now who are goofy.
And the thing was, they put on Octoman, and the guy who was the voice of Space Ghost is like, hey, can you riff on this? And Joel's just like looking at him going like, what? What do you want me to do on this?
You want me to make fun of Octoman?
Come on, it's Octoman. Make fun of it, And
they apparently deleted a lot of scenes from his episode, which is a shame, because I'm sure there's some funnier stuff in that vault somewhere.
Oh, there's got to be. What, for Space Ghost?
Yeah. It's like they edited his episode a bit. I know Weird Al was on one. There's so many great guys.
Carol Channing was on one. Frank Carter's B-52s. Matthew Sweet was on one.
Was Drew Carey on one? There's some other comedian who had a sitcom then. I think Seinfeld was on one.
Why am I on Space Ghost?
Who are these aliens? Who are these people?
And what's the deal with these alien probes?
If I had my way, I'd probably blow up Space Ghost and get my own TV show.
I love that prank, man. You knew you were watching Space Ghost.
I already got one. I'm back.
I'm Brock.
That's good. I'm on your show. I'm Second Banana. Isn't that great?
Second
Banana.
What about I think it's wonderful. Let's sing a song.
Oh man! And the funniest thing, in the early 2000s, it got even funnier. Like post 2002, they just start playing ads for like Space Ghost and Futurama that were airing, and they let out some language like "son of a bitch" or "damn." And you're like, hey, and this is during the time when the kids are watching TV. So, guess what they're going to try and.
The thing I always loved about Futurama was that it kind of got its appeal back when it was on Cartoon Network. And then it left and it went to FX.
Yeah, that and Family Guy definitely reminded people that these shows were beloved, and it's basically what got Family Guy renewed, and all the other ones is like, and it just reminded people is like wherever you're rerun, you get the second generation of your audience there, you know.
Well, did you ever see the one where they were rerunning Family Guy and it's like Seth MacFarlane's doing the host interviews and he's got like a pipe and stuff and he's like doing these like really like off-color jokes, you know, like he's going, I'm from the Federation of Men Who Like, I can't say it, but well, I'll say it. Can I say it?
Go for it.
Hi, my name is Seth MacFarlane. I'm from the Federation of Men Who Like Pussy. And it was just like, oh my God. Oh God. And he's like,
was that 05 he did that? 06? Because I think he did some other bunch of bumpers that were just on Adult Swim.
It's the bumper for and it was the episode they were going to show was When You Wish Upon a Weinstein, which did not on Fox. And Peter sings that song, what am I need a Jew. And I was like, I'm literally covering my mouth trying hard not to laugh. You know, like they go to temples like Optimus Prime, you're Jewish. He has the mezuzah on and everything.
He basically was taking Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song and just taking it to just the more not safe for work level. Everybody's a fucking Jew.
He went for like Adam Sandler's here, and I'm you know not really a big Adam Sandler fan, but
me neither. But that song's gold.
That song is golden, yeah. But I mean, like
all Free Stooges. There's the Ford's a quarter.
No, so is gold. You know, put them on here. What a fine-looking Jew.
That's a good Peter Griffin. Oh, man.
O.J. Simpson, not a Jew. Is Hall of Famer Rod
Carew.
Oh my God.
But like, I remember like that came out, and then they said, "Okay, we're bringing Family Guy back on the air." And
we don't like how you just took our show or sold the rights, and we got to still back that viewership.
Like it's funny because like I had those seasons on DVD. I bought them, and I would watch.
They're all uncensored and everything. You want to know which episode I kept stumbling upon? And like it just once a year. I kid you not, it just was always on. It was the one where he's like he gets like ambushed by like a gator or some shit. He's out in the outback or some shit.
Oh, yeah, no, it's the koala.
Yeah, I just would keep encountering that one, and sometimes it'd be like at a clinic or whatever, just with the sound muted. I'm like, I know exactly how this episode ends.
Well, that came on after. I remember that came on after the Super Bowl. That was the Family Guy came on the first day airing after the Super Bowl. Totally. And I remember I was upstairs with my girlfriend at the time, who we eventually got married and divorced, and and we're watching it, and she's like, I don't find this funny at all, and I'm like howling at some of the jokes they're doing, because it was just I got the references, but the thing was that like you think about it now, he's Seth MacFarlane is now a juggernaut, with all the stuff that he's doing. Yep. Matt Groening, juggernaut. Mike Judge, juggernaut, because he's bringing Beavis and Butthead back, thank God. Although they're going to be like older, which I don't really like. I think they should just be like stuck in that teenage mode of I just think, and I think about all the people that did those voices in the 90s, Maurice LaMarche, Tress MacNeille, Jim Cummings, right, if I'm correct?
Something like that, yeah.
Rob Paulson, Billy West, all those people, all the cast of The Simpsons, the cast of Futurama. It's just this
the gods of animation.
It's like I said, cartoons are never going to die.
No.
Saturday morning cartoons are never going to die. They're still going to be there. When we're long and gone, some generation will find them and be like, wow, this is cool.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, there will always be an audience. It's a matter of just introducing them. Just like, hey, check out these cartoons where it's like they actually put some thought into this instead of, hey, you're grossed out now and not in a good way.
I mean, my sister-in-law won't let my kids watch. Won't let my youngest nephew watch Bugs Bunny.
Are you serious?
I tried to. Now my niece, I watched Bugs Bunny with my grandnephew, and he was cracking up, especially when it was Rabbit, the one where they go hunting. But I tried. Hey, Jonathan, you want to watch Bugs Bunny? Now my older nephew, Matthew, he loves Bugs Bunny, but it's like I'm like, hey, does he ever watch Bugs Bunny or anything like that? He watches this show. I don't know what the hell it is on the iPad. And I'm like, the kid should watch Bugs Bunny or the Three Stooges or something like that. And I'm like, but they don't know. I said one day he's gonna watch. He's gonna find Bugs Bunny. He's gonna find a Bugs Bunny with Daffy Duck. Or he's gonna find Daffy Duck. Conquers the Daffy Duck and Marvin the Martian. He's gonna laugh hysterically about it. I swear. Sometimes I see some people in my generation who forget about this stuff.
Their mind is just deteriorating. It's like, there's nothing good on. I'm like, well, they are at the worst hour.
They are no fun at all. They are no fun.
Yeah, the animation today is kind of gone in the other direction. They
get an F- for no fun.
Exactly, and and they miss out on the reason why cartoons have persisted.
They don't know why it exists in the first place. I see so many people who get cable, but they don't have a DVR. I'm like, well, then give it up now, because if you don't have time to watch it or you can't record it, then there is no point in doing this.
I'll give you a great case in point of a series of cartoons that have done well since, because they're part of a mega movie franchise that has basically yesterday celebrated its 45th anniversary, and that's Star Wars.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Because we suffered through we had Ewoks and droids, and then all of a sudden the Clone Wars came along. And we had the Getty Taranovsky Clone Wars, and then we had the Clone Wars.
Yeah, Jenny Tartakovsky, he did so good. He kept me interested in Star Wars for that little next input, and it was just so cool to just see him take his. I mean, I guess we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Samurai Jack. I know many people swear by that, but to see him take what he had done on Powerpuff Girls and Samurai Jack, and then just make that Star Wars his own. You got Mace Windu, Sam Jackson's character, just going around and beating the shit out of unstoppable battle droid armies with his fists.
Or seeing all these Jedi you never saw in the movie fight, like
and Tom Kane's a great voice actor who's done all sorts of things, but he's at like the third stage of his career, and he's basically immortalized the character of Yoda in some respects.
Well, he just had a stroke, right? He just had a stroke.
I think so.
And he's not going to be doing it. They're going to get somebody else to do it if they need to do it again. But the guy James Arnold Taylor who does Obi-Wan,
he's a great actor. There you go. There's Ratchet from Ratchet and Clank. But yeah, he's done.
And Matt Lucas who did Anakin.
No relation.
No. And the thing I love is they brought all these guest stars in for one shots.
Mm-hmm.
Like they brought in what was it? What's his face? The guy who plays Mr. Krabs.
Clancy Brown. Yes.
Clancy Brown was on Rebels.
Clancy Brown, George Takei has done some. Who's the guy?
Baker. Tom Baker from Doctor Who did the
freaking Tom Baker. And I mean, Tim Curry voiced the Emperor before they got someone else. Who was the guy who voiced freaking
Ian Abercrombie did the original voice.
Yeah, Ian Abercrombie. Who voiced the new Darth Maul?
Oh no, it was the same guy who did it in Sam
Whitmer. Oh, that's
Sam
right.
Witwicky?
That's right. Yeah, the guy from the Force Unleashed video game. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and it was great to see Ian McDermott do the voice in Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear James Earl Jones do the voice of Vader in a couple episodes. So it was, that to me is always going to stick with me, to see that. And now they've got the Bad Batch out.
Yeah.
Which is going to be amazing. I haven't seen it yet. I want to see it. I got to find time to see it.
We got to find time for all this.
You know, between work and whatever the hell else I'm doing, I'm like, ugh, you know. But yeah, it's like, you know, cartoons are never going to fade away. They're never going to be gone. You know, nobody's gone forever. You know,
how you want to remember it? That's a whole different story. But
you know, here's a quick thing. Does anybody remember a show on Adult Swim called Rain?
Ooh,
no, I've never heard of that.
Which was about Alexander the Great. It was like a really good version of the story of Alexander the Great. And it was only on for maybe about 6-7 weeks, and then it got pulled. And it was the story of Alexander the Great. Really good to watch. You have to watch. I'm trying to look for it. You got to watch it. But it was really well done because they almost did like a future version of it. You know, like it didn't look as hokey as, let's say, some other shows that were on at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but interesting fact. Do you realize that the original cast of Pokemon was fired and they were replaced with new actors?
I did not know that.
No.
Russie Taylor.
I knew about the R-rated versions and everything, including taking out the tower because of 9/11.
Yeah. Russie Taylor posted on one time and said, I was fired from Pokemon. They're bringing a new cast in because of the fact that they do not like our voices anymore. So they replaced like all these people. I'm like, what the hell? You know,
what's going on here?
What's going on here? You know. But yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Like, you know, we had the Japanese game, you know, the Japanese card game, you know, cartoons. We had the superhero cartoons come back. We had this alternative animation. We had shows that were dealing with, like, you know, very wacky, absurdist humor. Some of it veering towards dirty humor. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where do we go from here? You know.
It's got to be something that just really makes people want to just get up in the morning and just watch it. And unfortunately, I think we've exhausted a lot of that, which is a shame because we could really learn a lot if we went the extra mile and just had something witty and do background checks, make sure none of these writers are just creepy, you know.
Yeah, we don't want to have somebody writing about, you know, Hadrian.
We don't want to. Yeah, we don't want a Dan Schneider situation.
Yeah. Oh. Was that true?
From what I've heard, it's
true enough.
It's true.
So that's who I was thinking at the start. Was Drew Schneider. Yeah.
The guy who was the heavy set guy on Head of the Class, right?
That's the one.
Something like that. Yeah.
Oh my God, I remember him doing like he was in Head of the Class, but I remember him doing like Kenan and Kel.
Yes.
And all that, and now they're saying he was like a pedo or something like that.
Yeah. That's the Snyder guy. Yes, that's the one. He was the one who is like, they're like, we'll work with you from afar, but we're not going to give you any money for any of this because creep.
Yeah. Heavily into feet.
Oh,
he was Tarantino. Yeah.
Oh God.
Tarantino in cartoon mode. Oh man.
I want them. You know what I'd love for them to do a cartoon of? Kill Bill.
Ooh.
Oh.
I thought about like great cartoons they could do.
And give me that live action Afro Samurai movie that Sam Jackson keeps teasing. He's getting up there, fellas. We need him.
But I thought about it was a great cartoon that I swear to this day I have watched it and I swear it's one of the most memorable cartoons ever. The Boondocks.
Oh yes.
The Boondocks.
When Atlanta came out, I was like, they've already made fun of this on freaking Boondocks, on Stardom and the rap scene.
That woke me. I mean, that mentally got me thinking about a lot of the things Aaron Magruder was talking about. You know, with the whole culture and everything like that. The R. Kelly trial one was. I literally was like,
R. Kelly one was funny. Fuck you, fuck your life, fuck everything about you.
I love the one Stink Meaner. The old guy who, like, you know, it's Stink Meaner. Stink Meaner comes back from hell, you know, because they did that with they were like redoing, like, you know, what movie was it? where the guy gets possessed by the old school gangster.
Oh, Petey Wheatstraw, something like that.
No, not Petey Wheatstraw. No.
It was like almost like a semi tribute to Tales from the Hood. They're just making them all.
No, it was in the 70s.
It was in the 70s. Fuck.
It wasn't the Mac. I'm thinking of the one I'm thinking of. Shoot, what was it? I'll have to look it up. But it was like a thing where the guy gets possessed by Stink Meaner, and then I love the one when they were in prison. And it's their neighbor who's Mr. Upper, and he beats the crap out of the guy with a bar of soap. It was all these great things, and
making fun of all these different cliches and stereotypes about society.
But the thing I love the most is they did one episode where they did a thing where the grandpa played by Jimmy Witherspoon, who I miss dearly to this day, opens a restaurant called the Luther Burger. Have you ever heard this story? Supposedly it's a story that I've heard. Luther Vandross was hungry one night, and he basically went to a place and said, look, I want a hamburger. I want a double cheeseburger. So they didn't have any rolls, so they got a Krispy Kreme donut, right? They got a Krispy Kreme donut, cut it in half. It was 2 hamburger patties, 2 pieces of cheese, bacon, lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise or something on it, right? And he creates a sandwich called the Luther Burger. Meanwhile, the one kid, the kid who's not Riley, the other one, the kid who's not the gangster, the kid who's smart, is reading he's reading from soul food. He's telling, the grandma didn't get sick. No, the grandma lost her leg in soul food, and then she died of a heart attack. Yeah. He's reading Elijah Muhammad's, the diet for a small planet, all that stuff. And so meanwhile, he opens this restaurant, and the restaurant gets all this business, right? And then what happens is people start having these diabetic attacks called the itis, which is a term for something I don't want to say. No, he names the restaurant the itis. All right, so and people start getting addicted to this Luther Burger that he has, and they start robbing places, and these are upstanding citizens, and he closes the store down. Meanwhile, he gets sued for heart attacks, diabetes. I mean, it's just
he's making fun of all these addicting foods and trends and fitness.
Well, the thing I love is he puts beds in the restaurant because people are so sugar shocked, or they're sleeping, and people are eating more and sleeping. So people are staying missing days from work. They're getting fired. They're losing their houses and all this shit. I think it's one of the funniest episodes I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And it got it was really good to watch. It was smart writing.
Back when they could be smart, and it just seemed like after a while everyone just wanted to, again, like I say, imitate South Park and but not put any thought into it. There were some that just got out of okay, so 2 more before we go. I know the Ren and Stimpy guys, they created with Stanley, Stripperella. I would see parts of that. I was just that's just outrageous. But then there was another one, Tripping the Riff. That's what it was. That was Sci-Fi Channel's answer to that. And it's okay, so we don't need Jenny McCarthy. She's kind of an idiot. So we'll scrap her and get a different voice for the cute hologram gal or whatever. And I just remember seeing parts of it. I'm like, man, sci-fi, pretty ballsy to be doing this. Usually you're playing a modified for TV, movie or one of your Stargate shows. They're no, this is interesting because you're trying to be, again, like you say, when something like the Boondocks or, again, just any of these other shows that we praised all this time comes along, they stick with you because you're someone took a chance and they allowed all this creative freedom. And we ate it up and we remember it, but for the right reason, as opposed to, whatever infamous stupid thing I saw on a Nintendo channel one night. It sticks with you because you're just you want some of that creative freedom back. And yet again, people are complaining about how they got to sign up for all these streaming platforms. It's because otherwise the show you signed up for is going to get canceled. It just, the ratings are not there. They're slowly adjusting, and people are now, basically it seems like everyone has to come out with like a Bob's Burgers knockoff cartoon show, or in live action, basically it has to be just some other, I don't know, take on Breaking Bad. But so it's like, people have all this creativity, and if it has to be people come up with something that they messed around with in Adobe Paint and put it on YouTube, that's basically where you're going to find something cool now, if in web series form.
And that's the big reason why animation is not going to go anywhere, because you're always going to find people who are looking at
it's so much easier too.
Yeah, and looking at the current situation and saying, "This sucks. Let me. I can do something better." And then, before you know it, you're going to get something that's going to be virally popular. That's how Undercover Brother became a major motion picture.
Yeah, it was an internet cartoon.
Exactly. And even if 99% of the stuff that's being cranked out sucks, it's a lot better than the stuff that's actually being mass produced.
Yeah, right. Because then if people keep watching, they take it, oh, they like it. And it's like, not necessarily. They're just kind of, they could literally just be on just because people on the crew watched it or what have you. Or people have a TV on. Doesn't mean we actually wanted to see it. There's plenty of stuff that lasts for 10 years and you're like, how the fuck was that on for 10, a decade? And it's like, someone watched it.
It was very popular in the Como Award.
Right. Oh man. Everyone's lead star's cousins all watched it. That probably helped. Yeah. It's just bizarre. You look at some of these other ones and you're like, it lost me after that season. I don't know why it was on for 5 more years. And again, everything's oversaturated, like you say.
Yeah. Well, it's like with a cartoon, at least you can, you come out, you go in a different direction. You have that thing where it's, you have writers and the writers are coming up and you can work with voices and you don't have to worry about filming a scene where, this goes wrong or that goes wrong or something like that,
it doesn't match up. I can change the template or 3D style.
Yeah. And the thing is, like with me, it's like one of the greatest shows of all time animated was the Flintstones, right?
Uh-huh.
And they never really, I mean, they kind of lost it the last season, Anne Margrock and Stoney Curtis, but it was great to watch, it was great to watch. And you had, and then you go into, you go to stuff like nowadays you've got Family Guy, you still got The Simpsons on after almost 35 years. You've got, American Dad.
Yes.
Which is, I think, a great show. You had the Cleveland Show, which I thought was really good. I'm trying to think what else. Bob's Burgers, that's going to be a movie coming out soon.
Yeah. That'll be on till the end of time.
Yeah.
Archer's still here.
Archer's still here.
South Park will always be around.
South Park will always be around, but I think South Park's kind of like, they kind of like, I don't want to say screw the pooch, but they did technically. I mean, they did. They've kind of thrown a lot of things at, like, the Family Guy and stuff like that, because they're not as. I don't want to say they're still controversial. They still got the core audience, but they're not as controversial as like some other cartoons are now.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still good. I've watched some highlights of some new shows, and they're like just hilarious. Like I loved when Terrence Phillip and the prince. There was the one, the Princess of Canada gets abducted.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like, and here comes the Queen of Canada. She whiffs. It was like the it's like the royal wedding, and like she's now pulling his arms off, and now she's going to stuff his arm up his ass. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, a great day in Canada. It was just I watched it and I was like, my wife is there. She's like, what the hell are you laughing at? I'm like, you have to watch this to like get it, So I mean, they're not going anywhere. They're not going to lose their momentum. The day The Simpsons goes off the air, I think we're going to have enough cartoons to watch it for about maybe 20 years.
And they will have already been replaced by like 500 tasteless cartoons. So
Yeah, I mean, they tried doing a Napoleon Dynamite cartoon that failed.
Man,
yeah,
they did that. They did that one. What was that one? Breckleberry, whatever it was called.
Brickleberry. Yeah, that was bizarre. Yeah,
that was bizarre. That failed. You know, there's just, you know, there was one show called God, the Devil, and Bob. Which,
man.
Oh, I'm sorry to keep you awake.
No, that's fine. I remember that one because it was just like, was it on MTV or Cartoon Network?
It was on NBC. Ooh, NBC gave it the green light.
How did they get away with that stuff?
It was French Stewart. French Stewart played the devil, and James Garner played God.
Oh, do you remember Fodder of the Pride? Where Dreamworks did a TV-14 cartoon, and everyone was so offended. You're like, oh, it's Donkey from Shrek just showed up, but they just said some not inappropriate language.
Well, what happened with that was that the reason that got pulled is because of Siegfried and Roy.
Wait. What?
You didn't know that?
Of Sigmund Freud?
Siegfried and Roy.
Siegfried and Roy.
Like.
Yeah.
That's Siegfried and Roy.
Yeah. Hello, Siegfried. Hello, Roy. The lions were supposed to be lions for Siegfried and Roy.
Wow.
And when Roy, got his head almost mauled off, they pulled Father of the Pride.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Political pressure.
Yeah. Opposed to jugular pressure, which is what Roy needed. Terrible.
Did it ever get released on DVD, or was it just too controversial?
It was. I think they released it on DVD. I think it was just like, okay, kick it out on DVD, whatever we got on there. Just
the only thing we got left since everything's been censored now.
So, yeah, I'm just waiting for them to, like, you know, put out a mega box for Super Friends, which me and Tom would buy in a heartbeat.
Give it time. Yeah. It's only going to take 900 more signatures.
And I'd have to say that if the DVD set has to come, all the DVDs have to come in a box shaped like the Hall of Justice.
Yes. When you open it up, you have the original core 4 figures.
That'll be the silver case.
Yeah, that'll be the silver. And you open it up and you hear that shoosh, like with the starbursts they had.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And you press the button, you hear, meanwhile, back in the Hall of Justice. Yeah.
Both the Ted Knight version and the later version.
In the William Wyndham version, yeah. Somebody brought
meanwhile, back in the Hall of Justice.
Meanwhile, back in the Hall of Justice.
The Hall of Justice.
Somebody brought up a really funny idea. They said, why don't you do a cartoon of Nosferatu? That would be fun to do.
Nosferatu. They've done a few different animated versions of Dante's Inferno, but they should do, I don't know. I feel like
Dr. Alighieri, Metropolis.
I'm listening.
Let's see what else. Faust.
I feel like they should do something of the, I don't know if you ever saw El Super Beasto, The World of Super El Beasto, which was like a Rob Zombie movie. It'd be funny if they did something like that, where it's like, just have Alice Cooper's Hall of Terror or some shit. Just have some rock star sponsor some random excuse to have various comedians playing demented and demons. I don't know.
I could see Bill Burr doing a demon.
Bill Burr would totally do it. I'm sure Jack Black will sneak in a Tenacious D cameo and they fight the devil with rock and roll.
Get Daniel Tosh to do something.
Daniel Tosh, what has he been up to lately? I know he was like one of the minds behind Brickleberry, but
you can do Dane Cook, but he's just in the background waving with a sign saying, I'm just here. Thank God I'm just getting paid $5 to hold this sign, and then he walks out.
There you go. And his roommate is John Cena because he's invisible.
But you know, I did see Dane Cook one time.
Did you really?
I did run it. Yeah, he was parking my car outside a restaurant.
He was a valet guy.
Oh God, that guy!
Dang.
Oh, yeah.
Is he just douchey and over the top in person?
Oh no! My ex-wife saw him one time. She was up in Boston visiting friends. She says, "Oh, I saw Dane Cook." I'm like, "Oh, that's great. I don't care." He rips off more material than Milton Berle.
Milton Berle and
Amy Schumer.
Who's the guy who stole from freaking
Carlos Mencia?
Carlos Mencia took from Don Hicks.
Well, what was it? No. It was
Bill Hicks.
Bill Hicks. Dennis Leary ripped off Bill Hicks.
Yeah.
Okay. And somebody called him out one time. He says, "Yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm just being the angry guy on stage." But I know this is getting off what we were talking about.
At least Leary did it a few times as opposed to all the time.
But Mencia one time got on stage, and I think it was not Joe Rogan. I think Joe Rogan got on stage and started calling him out.
Right, which is so wild since Joe Rogan's basically stolen Howard Stern's thunder, is just put crazy people on the air and ask them stupid loaded questions.
So you drink antifreeze? No.
Right.
Would you like to?
You want to get high? Let's get high.
Yeah.
And talk about fitness. My father actually met David Asprey, the fitness guru, in person. It's like, it's so wild how Rogan was going to form a partnership and then was like, oh, Asprey, he's a witch doctor. It's like, just because he doesn't agree with your take on fitness and he knows what he's talking about? What the fuck, Rogan? I'm surprised Joe Rogan didn't get on the whole make an animated cartoon version of yourself with your fart buddies. I don't know.
I'm surprised.
I got it. I got something here. I'm gonna do my Jeff Goldblum voice because I think it's gonna be really good.
Tom Goes to the Mayor too.
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a remake of Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling, where we're gonna use MMA and put Joe Rogan in there.
Must
I
go
think it's
faster.
Be fantastic. It's going to suck horribly.
Must suck faster.
I never knew they. Critic about Joe Rogan's MMA cartoon. It broke the laws of physics. I've never seen something suck and blow at the same time.
Meanwhile, at the halls of justice, Joe Rogan.
Meanwhile, at the hall of justice. Kramer, what's going on, Kramer? Kramer, I've taken LSD and I have little people on my hands.
Oh, I would totally see that.
Jerry.
If it could be South Park presented by Jeff Goldblum with an animated versions of Seinfeld characters with Justice League announcers, that I would so see it. That would be amazing.
Meanwhile, back at Jerry's apartment.
Hello, Jerry. I've just become so crushed some stamps. They were soaked in something. Have you taken them? Newman, help me. Help me, Newman.
Oh, there you go. Newman is actually Lex Luthor.
Oh, God, I could see that.
And Elaine must turn into Wonder Woman, but first she has to challenge him to a dance-off.
Here's the great thing about South Park, that the one time they did a Christmas episode, Malcolm McDowell did the
right. That was part of their jokes. Take famous actors and have them do random cameos, like George Clooney plays the voice of Stan's dog, and Natasha Henstridge, who was the Species chick at that time, just play random sexy girlfriend at a party.
My favorite was Family Guy having, and now we present a famous actor beating Vogue, and it's Derek Jackman going, crap. He's like ripping up, crap, all crap, the table of contents. I mean, it was just so good. And they had Ian McKellen. Ian McKellen plays Stewie's psychiatrist.
Oh, yes. That was inspired casting right there.
And they had Peter Riegert on as the Jewish guy that helps Peter. They had
who was the voice of Superman in like the first Family Guy cartoon I ever saw, where he's in hell for soliciting prostitutes or something, and he's in a card game with some random other guys.
No, I don't remember that.
You ever seen that one where like Peter wakes up in hell, or it's either Stewie or Peter wakes up in hell, and he just finds Superman just randomly with some other guys at a bar in hell.
My favorite was they're playing poker at the Hall of Justice. Peter's dressed up as Superman. Okay, Wonder Woman, you gotta take your top off. Hey, wait, Robin, why are you looking at me like that?
Oh man.
So yeah, cartoons won't die.
No.
Cartoons will never die,
Video games might, but
video games might, but you know what I think is gonna happen one day? We're gonna go back to 8-bit.
That would be interesting.
We go back to 8-bit, 16-bit. Because to me, the video game market now has gotten so big and so out of hand. We got to go back to where it was, like with Duke, with like Doom and Tecmo Bowl and all those games that are growing up.
Yep.
I'll tell you, some of the best games that are being put out right now are indie titles. They're harkening back to the 16-bit days. There's one I downloaded for my PS4.
You have a PS4? I have a PS5. I have a PS3. I'm behind the times.
I have a PS2 from 2001. It still works.
Right.
Hey, if it works and it brings you joy, do it.
Yeah. I love.
The point is that the animation on that is very much 16-bit.
Oh.
And it's like, it plays amazingly well. It's still complex. It still has things you can do. But at the end of the day, like I said, you're seeing indie developers starting to get into that and not going for the more photorealistic stuff.
I miss the days when they would put in Easter eggs, or the fact that you could put these games in a CD player and it would play the whole isolated music score.
Well, here's what. Still there?
Yeah. Not dead yet.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what gets me is like, it's like I don't mind having like cut scenes. I don't want to. I just want to have a video. That's what's gonna happen. It's all gonna go back to the basics again.
If you're gonna do a cut scene, make it be funny.
Yeah, you got it. This is what's gonna happen. You're gonna have these cartoons are gonna go back to the basics again. It's probably gonna be cell animation again. Because you can do a lot more with computers and cell animation. You can mix it up and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
All this stuff's never going to go away. All this stuff's never going to disappear unless, some people have their way,
Unless.
But, but yeah, man, cartoons are going to be forever,
For now. Unless an EMP bomb wipes us out, then it's going to go to the internet and people are going to try and find ways to talk shit.
But then we'll just do it on the walls of different buildings.
We'll do it live.
And then the cycle begins again.
The cycle continues.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.